Of course, this is just me having worked in news or whatever, but I always look at like the news reports and look at like the graphics.
So bad.
Well, I'm just like, that's how I try to gauge like what time period. Like, oh, those are new graphics. It's modern.
Yeah, but okay. Listen, I'll tell you how modern it is. Hi, this is Randall here for No Market Media.
And I'm Matt. Today, Randall and I are talking about the latest live-action iteration of The Dark Knight. We're talking about The Batman. It stars Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Andy Serkis, and Colin Farrell. It is co-written and directed by Matt Reeves. He's also directed Cloverfield as well as War for and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But before we go any further, if you like this review, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Also be sure to hit subscribe and ring that bell to get notifications on our latest videos.
In The Batman, we find the Riddler is killing off members of Gotham City's elite class and leaving messages for the Batman in the process. As the mystery of who the Riddler is ramps up, the killings start getting closer to unveiling uncomfortable secrets for almost everyone in Gotham. This reportedly had about a $200 million budget, and right now, early returns are looking good for sequels. It has received positive reviews from both critics and audiences. The Batman was originally supposed to be released way back in June of 2021, but has been delayed twice. Currently, there are no known connections to the existing DCEU, and I'm personally very happy that they came out and just said that. Alright, so I think first and foremost I want to say, the filmmakers went out of their way to make a good movie before making a good Batman movie.
Mm-hmm.
They knew they had to do both to be successful. But I think that the point is, this is something that even if you're not a Batman fan, you could probably enjoy to some extent. Although I do think it is a little long. I mean, it is runtime 2 hours, 55 minutes, just say 3 hours. Some of that is not necessary. Mm-hmm. Some of that runtime is definitely not necessary. And some like strange, overlong establishing shots. Like, oh, okay, yeah, yep, that's Gotham. That's still Gotham. So adding to the runtime that didn't necessarily need it, but it's a Matt Reeves film, so he kind of gets to do what he wants at this point. I was mostly happy.
Yep. Yeah, I'll start off on that runtime. I also agree it is a bit long, though I will say I did enjoy watching the film throughout. It wasn't one of those where I'm like, hey, I'm ready for this like wrap up. Let's leave this. But there are some storylines and threads and stuff in this movie that I didn't enjoy as much. But overall, I did like this film, and I do think it's a little bit of a different take on Batman than some of the other like live action movies that we've seen. This one I think really goes into more of like Detective Batman. And for like comics and stuff, that's what I enjoy. I enjoy Detective Batman. I was joking with some friends before that like this movie puts the detective back in Detective Comics. Yep.
You know what Detective Comics is, right? DC Comics.
So like I was saying, this to me is a detective story, and that's a lot of stuff I like, going on in this film. Now, to me, also the story as like the look and stuff, it has kind of like some Saw elements, or maybe even like the movie Seven a little bit with it too over. But generally I do like looking at like a detective Batman, and this movie for like story there isn't a whole lot of like Bruce Wayne. This is really, Batman being Batman pretty much all the time. Even when he's not in costume, he's rarely wearing that mask of, like, Bruce Wayne in this film.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to get into that more in characters for sure, for a fact. As far as the story is concerned, this is, like you said, it's back to basics is how I describe it. This is a back to basics Batman. This is him being early. This is him doing detective work, trying to figure out what's going on with the Riddler, trying to figure out who the Riddler is, why he's doing what it is, unraveling the mystery of the Riddler's current, killing spree, basically. And, of course, other things are happening. It's not just the Riddler. everyone else gets kind of pulled in and is tied in with what the Riddler's doing. The one thing I would say about the detective work is Batman does a really good job of like being the person who solves the riddles for the most part, but he's not the person who does all of the like decoding. You see, you get like lots of help from Alfred, and in a particularly amazing and comical scene, help from the Penguin, because he's apparently the only one who doesn't speak shit Spanish. It's funny, trust me. Like you're thinking, what is he talking about? If you haven't seen it, you'll laugh. Like, and I'm like, okay, well, that kind of takes away from like Batman being the detective and figuring it out, and gives some of that stuff to other characters because maybe those characters didn't have quite enough to do.
This one, they're at like the crime scenes. And I like the idea from like the detective standpoint that we have it where, you know, it is like we're developing this crime scene and there isn't even sometimes that like dialogue to point out like the different piece of evidence. Like it's just like Batman looks different places and looks at different things.
The
like
cops, the forensic cops are like, huh, I didn't even notice that.
Exactly. Looking for different clues and stuff. And it's all calculated mind. This movie also shows a way that Batman kind of like catalogs stuff as well too. And how, you know, he can readily access. So it's not just like superhuman like memory and different stuff too. The movie goes in a little bit where, you know, actually shows how Batman's able to keep all this information and stuff that he's investigating.
It's interesting you say that, and this is kind of part of like the plot of how he does what he does, basically. How he can do what Batman does. I liked this, and I was trying to explain it to, you know, someone off screen when I was watching this reminds me a lot of the animated series because it's got that big, expansive Gotham. It's still got all those gothic elements, but it's got technology. They have cell phones. They have like this really cool system where he can track what was going on during his, you know, his night stalking. So they don't shy away from saying that it's modern, but they also don't just put it out there and make it all crystal clean like the Dark Knight series did. You got all these big, beautiful, modern buildings. This reminds me a lot of Batman the Animated Series.
I mean, of course, this is just me having worked in news or whatever, but I always look at like the news reports and look at like the graphics.
So bad.
Well, I'm just like, that's how I try to gauge like what time period. Like, oh, those are new graphics. It's modern.
But okay, listen, I'll tell you how modern it is. They have some archive footage from when Bruce Wayne's father's running for mayor. And they're using exactly the same graphics. I'm like, listen, no news agency's using the same graphics for 20 years.
They could only buy one graphics package for this movie.
So, don't think I didn't notice, Warner Brothers. Don't think I didn't notice. Characters. I think a lot of this is just, it's centered around Batman. Not Bruce Wayne. Not Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
Batman. It's all about Batman. This is, you know, he's only been doing this for about 2 years. He's keeping journals. This is him and his learning and everything. You have all these other good characters, and I think that they all do a great job with their portrayals. You know, Zoe Kravitz does a good job as Selena and Catwoman, and John does a great job as Carmine Falcone and stuff like that. But I'm going to go out there. I'm just going to say it. The same thing I said for Batman Returns. If you haven't watched our review, go catch that. Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
He's a Penguin.
Is just stupid good. It has no reason to be that good. Now, it's not the same as Batman Returns with Danny DeVito. That's very, very different. But this depiction and what they were going for, if I didn't know it was Colin Farrell, I probably wouldn't know.
No, I totally agree with that one. And even like watching like the trailers leading up too, I always knew it was because of what we told. But like looking at it, I always second guess myself, like, is it really Colin Farrell? Like, you know, I always question, like, did they recast and not say anything and get someone that looks similar to Colin Farrell? Because I agree with you. To me, I think he kind of like goes in that role where I see the Penguin character and not Colin Farrell playing Penguin character.
And I want to be clear, this is an important distinction. The makeup and the like, all of that is great on him. But it is not just because of the makeup department. What he does with his voice and the depictions and his physical movements in portraying this character is what makes it so good.
Yep.
It is not just because the makeup department is making him look like a penguin or making him this kind of like characterish of a penguin. None of that.
Yep.
This was a really A+ acting job by Colin Farrell.
Yep.
I'm sure Matt wants to talk about Batman, but
I do, but really, I'm actually want to talk a little bit about our duos, because we have a couple like duels, I think, and Batman is in both of these duels. To me, I think the like star like Focus 2 characters, I like the Batman Gordon stuff, Jim Gordon. I almost said Commissioner Gordon. It's not Commissioner Gordon
Lieutenant
at this time. He's still just field work stuff, basically, most part investigating stuff. I really do, and that's highlights, kind of like that detective work stuff, and also adds to like the feel of like, like year one, like Batman comic. To me, this kind of feels like almost like a year one story, though we're not going into like Gordon's backstory like we do in like the year one comics and stuff too. But I really like that dynamic of like these two detectives together. The other one we have, I think Zoe Kravitz does an excellent job as like Selena Kyle, Catwoman. It does feel like a comic book depiction of that character that I've seen stuff I really enjoyed. I didn't quite enjoy as much the Batman and Catwoman dynamic and stuff too. I guess if you're saying like the two pairings, I prefer the Gordon and Batman stuff to like the Batman Catwoman stuff or whatever. Not saying it's bad. I think it's still good and enjoyable to watch. But to me, I think the real pairing that starts for me is like Batman and Gordon.
So for me, I mostly agree.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried that they were gonna make Catwoman too good. That they were gonna go the Boba Fett route. We need her to be a good person.
Yep.
She walks that tightrope really well. This character, the way it's written, of being kind of on Batman's side, but kind of not the goody two shoes of no guns and no killing that Batman is. Which, by the way, we're back to.
Mm-hmm.
With this Batman, no guns, no killing.
Yep.
There's even a fantastic joke about it.
Yep.
I really did like Zoe Kravitz in the role, although I mean, it's one of those weird things. In movies, you can kind of do whatever you want,
mm-hmm.
and as a vertically challenged person myself, I can't help. I look at it all the time. Scarlett Johansson's like 5'4", 5'5" ish, and every time I watch like Black Widow, I'm like, her heels are like this tall to get her to like stand anywhere near Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. Same thing for Zoe Kravitz here. She's not a particularly tall person, and Robert Pattinson's kind of on the taller side.
Mm-hmm.
Her heels are just like this tall. Now, like the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman, that was part of it because that was all sex appeal.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, it's just like, keep it out of the shot as much as you can, guys.
Yep.
Don't pay attention to the ridiculous height difference here.
Yep.
But she does a great job regardless. Poor woman having to walk around in those.
Yeah, I mean, with like Catwoman and stuff too, like it's, sometimes like Catwoman has her own thing that she's trying to do, and Batman has thing he's trying to do. And sometimes the two goals that they have, they kind of overlap at certain points, and we see a bit of that in this film. Now, one character before we move on, talking about the Riddler a little bit more, it's definitely a different depiction, and I don't really want to go into like spoilers when talking about the Riddler, but I think it's interesting the route that they go with the Riddler in this one, and then, kind of like the stuff at the end, kind of like after like the reveals that we get and stuff. I think, well done. I mean, we're listening. It's not a spoiler who the Riddler is since it's in the cast or whatever, Paul Dano kind of thing. Yeah. But kind of seeing the stuff that goes on and the role that Paul Dano plays, I think is a good job.
I liked the way he played the Riddler,
mm-hmm.
but I can have qualms with the depiction,
mm-hmm.
which kind of it's not necessarily straight into spoilers, but it's on the edge, so I don't want to like ruin it. But that's such a personal like, hey, I didn't like the way that this car looks,
mm-hmm.
but it could still be a great car.
You're right.
Kind of thing. Just because I didn't like the way that they maybe did X, Y, or Z in this movie doesn't mean that it doesn't serve the greater character or the greater storyline and work here.
Yep. Alright, so genre aspects, of course, going over a lot of stuff that we already mentioned. To me, I think this is a detective comics book movie. We were kind of talking about before when we were talking, previously, like, hey, this doesn't necessarily feel like a superhero movie.
No.
feels like a comic book movie. To me, that's what this feels like as well. I really did, as I mentioned, got year one vibes from this movie. And I know that's one of the inspirations, for this movie, what they're taking from a lot of, 1990s Batman comic books. And to me, I think it really does a good job nailing that stuff too. Also, if you want to know kind of what Pat Battinson or whatever you want to say is like,
Pat Bat.
I got kind of like Rorschach vibes a little bit, not to the extent of Rorschach, like Rand already mentioned. This isn't a Batman that shoots and kills and stuff.
No.
Rorschach would have no qualms
Dropping
with that
someone
or whatever.
down a chimney chute.
But really kind of like we get like the voiceover and stuff from, Batman when he's out there, you basically get that narration and stuff going on. And it gave me a lot of those kind of like feels and stuff too.
Yeah, the narration's something I didn't see coming.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my didn't see coming. But I didn't expect it. So yeah, I refer back to my comments on Batman Returns. This is a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it succeeds in bringing a lot of the pages that you may have read as a younger, 90s kid to screen.
Mm-hmm.
It does a good job of that. I can't say much more. Not going to babble on about it. Good comic book movie.
Yep. I will say one thing just to add a little bit different. They aren't trying to just recreate scenes from comic books.
No.
Like we've had in some other DC films where it's like, hey, remember this from the comic books? I think this movie hits the feel of the comic books, and that's really what they're going for.
Yeah. That's a very good distinction. Very good distinction. All right, now for my real didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
There's some pretty dramatic changes to some supporting cast members, and what goes on is completely spoiler filled. I'm not going to say it. Not going to spoil it here. Just my previous statement is standing true. Just because I didn't agree with it didn't mean it wasn't the right decision for this movie, for this depiction.
Yep.
I just did not see some of these really well-known characters being changed the way that they changed them.
Yep. Me, I would say what I didn't see coming, it kind of goes on a little bit about that. I guess I will just keep it vague in saying the Penguin's role in this movie. I didn't really see that coming, especially how we see him like in the trailers and how it's like promoted. We're thinking of like, Batman Returns. And we, front and center, Penguin, Catwoman, and then we have, Max too. Those are our three villains.
Yeah.
So this one, looking too, they're really hyping up, Riddler we know is the main, and we're showing like the Penguin and the Catwoman. I didn't actually expect Penguin's role to be what it is in this movie, but it makes sense, and it is this movie is setting up other stuff.
You know what? I'll just go out there and say, not that this isn't a see you coming, but I've complained in the past about movies that they worry about sequels first. Mm-hmm. They're like, we're gonna set all these threads for this is the sequel for this, this is the sequel for this, and this movie does that. But as I said in my opening, this movie is first and foremost a good movie.
Yep.
So they put the legwork in, they put the story elements down that needed to be put down for all of those threads to work in future movies.
Alright, generally, I liked this movie. I like our depiction of Batman in this movie, and we do give a growth kind of arc a bit for Batman in this movie. The Batman that we have at the beginning of this movie is different from the Batman that we have at the end of this movie, and that's something I really like. Some of the things with the Catwoman and Penguin I think were good, but didn't fully hit with me or whatever. I do think the actors did an excellent job with their portrayal and stuff too, but some things just didn't fully hit for me. I do like this movie. I'm interested to see where they go forward.
For the most part, this is a good movie. If you're a Batman fan, you've probably already seen it. But if you haven't, I definitely recommend you do go see it. You'll probably enjoy it quite a bit, especially for the Batman elements. There's a lot there for Batman. This is him as he's still young and in his really vengeful phase, basically. Yes. Still. And he grows, so you get to see character change. That's good. If you're on the edge, like, hey, this is a 3-hour movie, and I don't know that I want to go watch a 3-hour Batman movie, I do think that it's just a good movie enough that you can enjoy it. If you're just anti comic book movies, you're not gonna like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're just not. It's a comic book movie, so even though it's still a pretty good movie, I don't think it's like the people who wouldn't go see The Dark Knight. Like, it's just a comic book movie. Yeah, but it's really good. You know, I think this is similar, but whatever. This is a good movie.
Yep. And if everyone's wondering, like, hey, well, does this feel like a Nolan film? I mean, it has like Nolan elements, stuff to it, but they're both taken from the same source material. So no, this is a different movie, and I like it for being a different movie.
If you're worried because we've mentioned Year One a lot, this is not Batman Begins.
This is not Batman Begins. No, no, it's definitely not. But for those of you who've seen it, we want to know what you think about the Batman in the comments below. If you haven't seen it, do you plan on seeing it? Why or why not? Let us know that too. Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews on our YouTube page. We have other new movie reviews. We have flashback movie reviews. We take a look at TV shows. And we have deeper dive discussions.
But of course, we are also over on Facebook. If you haven't checked us out over there, make sure you do. We post some things about our other fandoms on Facebook, as well as posting the day before what's coming up next on YouTube. But if you don't have Facebook, don't worry about it. Put us on your schedules. New videos every Monday and Thursday. For now, I'm Randall here with No Market Media. See everyone next time.
And I'm Matt. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.